Hello everyone, I'm Hillary with Dominion Tea, and today we're going to talk about the history of tea in Sri Lanka. We start with the old map of Ceylon. So the island was given the name Ceylon by the British when they showed up in the 1800s. The name Sri Lanka was adopted by its citizens in 1972, a couple of decades after the British left the island. So we're going to talk about the history of this island and how important it is to the tea industry. So the big deal in Sri Lanka was coffee rust in 1859. So up to this point, the British had been using the island to produce coffee, not tea. They thought it was too hot for tea, quite frankly. But the coffee rust comes in and starts to really wipe out the plantations. And a gentleman by the name of James Taylor shows up in 1866. He'd been training in Darjeeling, and he takes on planting tea in the island. Now, that's not to say tea plants hadn't been there before, because they were. There were some planted in 1825 for a British ceremony, but they weren't being commercially harvested. So he gets started on the tea industry, and it booms. And so the first set of tea going out of Sri Lanka leaves in 1873 by ship. And Sri Lanka really starts into full-blown production and exportation. To give you an idea, in 1927, Sri Lanka exceeds 100,000 metric tons of tea. That's a lot of tea. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. They actually become the world's largest exporter of tea in 1965. Keep in mind, China's borders have been closed now for decades due to World War II, and then Mao Zedong in the Communist Party in China. And at this point, China is not exporting. And so Sri Lanka is the largest exporter in 1965. And we also give a nod to Sri Lanka for taking their tea auctions online and adopting the internet early for tea auctions in 2001. And so you're going to find out just how serious this industry is. So to give you an idea, the tea fields cover approximately 4% of this tiny island. The industry employs over 1 million people. They produce approximately 300 metric tons a year currently. That's 618 million pounds of tea. That's a lot of tea. And of course, they're producing it in various types, right? We talk about orthodox tea, so our loose leaf tea, tea bag tea, or what we call dust and fannings for ready to drink tea. Now, Sri Lanka was an island made for tea. We're talking high elevation. They have both a dry side and a wet side. So we're getting all that, periodic rain. We're not getting too cold because we're down near the Tropic of Cancer in the equator. So no hard freezes on the island of Sri Lanka. That's not to say they don't drop temperature in those upper elevations. They sure do, which is great for the tea. It gives you a lot of complex flavor. But they also get a good amount of fog too, which is great. And so we've got these various growing regions. Now, because we've got low elevation and mid elevation in this island, they're able to produce tea year round. Your high elevation teas are absolutely seasonal like China, going dormant during winter and then coming back online, usually around late February to March. And it is in those upper elevations, as well as some of the mid elevation, but mainly upper, that you're going to find loose leaf tea. And where it is produced, and it produces a beautifully complex flavor. So let's talk about some of the tea customs on the island, right? This is a former British colony. They have British style customs, right? Cream, sugar's optional. They use the British tea grading system. So as a quick refresher, right, we're talking about orange pekoe, and this refers to the color of the tips of the tea leaves themselves. It does not refer to the actual brew. So orange pekoe are going to be your largest leaves, and then they're going to go down in size from there to broken, to fannings, into what they call flowering fannings, which is a really nice name of saying dust, for tea bags, as well as dust sizes. And you will sometimes see numbers associated with the tail of these things because they're going to do it by size. So one is typically your largest, and the larger the number, the smaller the size as you go down the grades. So you will sometimes see these letter combinations attached to the end of Ceylon tea. So what is this country looking forward to? A lot. So Sri Lankan tea is the largest agricultural product for the island. It is so important to the economy that they are seeking a geographic identifier for the tea, and that is the symbol you see on the left-hand side of your screen that they are filing for. Keep in mind, we have other geographic identifiers in the tea industry, right? Darjeeling being one of them. This is really important in protecting this tea because Ceylon is expensive to produce. Mainly because of rising labor costs. Sri Lanka absolutely has child labor laws that have been in place for decades. And so children do not participate in the tea industry in Sri Lanka. And they have worked very hard to make sure the entire island is under fair trade. So most estates, especially those estates that produce loose leaf tea, are absolutely fair trade estates. And so the government as a whole has invested a lot into this industry and keeping it running. So much so that they're actually starting to tie their tourism industry to the tea industry and try to kind of model the Darjeeling model, which is let's take you on a tour, get you on a train, get you out to the tea fields, let you stay on the tea fields if they have housing available. Some do, some don't on the island. And allow you to tour around. And they're really starting to tie those together and market them together. And Sri Lanka is very aggressive in its marketing here in the States. You're going to find out very soon that their Dustin Fannings is going to become the iced tea base for the sweet tea that's going to be served at Chipotle here stateside. So that's one of their biggest contracts that they just won. And so it's a big deal for them. The other part, if you look at it from those of us who like to drink their higher end teas, to give you an idea of how valuable their tea really is, the country of Iran accepted payment from Sri Lanka this year. So, well, actually would have been in 2021. So just last year, because we're just into 2022. They accepted payment in Sri Lankan tea for Sri Lanka's oil debt to Iran. Keep in mind, because of economic sanctions, Iran's not able to get tea. They do grow their own, but not enough to meet demand. And so when Sri Lanka asked if it was possible for them to pay off their oil debt in tea, because the tea was worth more than their current currency because of foreign rate exchange issues and, of course, COVID issues affecting the foreign currency markets, the Iranians jumped on it. And they accepted the tea for payment. So when you ask about, should you go and try a tea when a government's willing to take tea instead of cash for oil debt, you might want to see what they're excited about and what they value so much. So go out, explore, and enjoy this beautiful tea because it's got a beautifully complex flavor that is well worth enjoying without that British cream and sugar.
We hope you enjoyed learning more about tea with us. Hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified when we add more videos to our channel. And check out the highlighted videos to learn even more about tea. And last but not least, you can check out all of the teas we talk about in our videos at dominiontea.com.